My name is Nathan Mispel. I'm 31 years old. I've been married for 10 years, been together with my wife for 14 years total.
We have two beautiful kids. One's 8 and one's 6.
And I just want to take this time to share with you what God did in our lives and in our marriage, to just let you know that God is still very much alive. He's still very much performing miracles to this day.
I'm here to tell you my story about how God can restore your marriage or anything that you're going through.
I remember when I first met my wife, I was just a kid. We used to come over with my dad and my stepmom from New Hampshire to Vermont, to a small town called Bridgewater, Vermont, for this weekend event called Harvest Days of Praise.
The first thing that drew my attention was his eyes, and I was a little kid and I was instantly just loved him and called him Cliffy's little friend.
I just remember hanging out with her brother and being friends with her brother and stuff. I remember in the summer of 8th grade, after finishing elementary school, getting ready to go into high school, I remember going on a camping trip with my father. And I remember meeting a kid there named Todd. He was older than me, and we just kind of hit it off, and we were playing basketball one time. And I remember I told him as I was getting ready to go into high school, I said, I'm not drinking, I'm not partying, I'm not doing any of that stuff. I already said, well, I'm committed, I'm not going to do it. And I remember him saying that once you get into school, that will all change. And it was funny, he was absolutely correct. I remember as I entered into the 9th grade, I wasn't doing that stuff at first. And then it's funny how peer pressure from my friends and the surroundings changed all that. For whatever reason, it caused me to want to have more of it. And I would never just drink it for the taste. I would drink it to get drunk because I couldn't hack the taste. And I remember actually having my friends bring it into high school, and we would drink it right at school, and we would, I'd get in a lot of trouble, different things like that. And here I am, I'm a Christian during this whole time. I was going to church on Sundays. I grew up in a Christian home, and I was just traveling down a bad road, started to. I remember my grades were failing. I was getting detentions, and I was just headed nowhere. And my dad recognized that. He recognized the road I was traveling on. And because I would be gone every weekend and any chance I could to get away and party. After 9th grade finished, he took me out of there and he put me in a private school called Mid-Vermont Christian School in 10th grade.
I had no idea that would be where I would meet Nate. Nate and I started dating shortly after that.
I would still, on the weekends, I would go to the Christian school Monday through Friday. On the weekends, I would go party with all my buddies and then do it all over again. And when we got together, Casey wasn't having any of this drinking or partying or any of that type of stuff. And she pulled me away from that. I remember there was times we would actually just have to hang out, and the addiction was so strong as I desired it so much that we would just have to hang out together and spend time in my room or whatever, and just as something to keep me occupied from doing that. And I'm starting to get away from that. Even though I did stop drinking eventually, she helped me to stop drinking. We spent the rest of our high school years together. And if we fast forward to when she graduated from high school.
We got married in 2005, and by 2007, we had our son and we had purchased a house, and things were going great.
I was 20, she was 19, and we bought a house. I had a new truck, new lawnmower for the business. Things were coming together. On the outside, everything seemed great.
All of a sudden, shortly after having the house, Nate started getting very angry and was struggling with a pornography addiction.
Everything on the outside seemed great. I was going to church. I would even get up early on Saturday mornings to go to Bible study. And it was amazing. Even though I had what people would call the American dream, I had the nice house, I had the nice vehicle, I had a family, I had everything that really anyone could ask for. I was very blessed with that. I still was missing something inside of me, and I truly believe if anything happened to me, if I did die, that I would have gone to heaven. I truly believe that. But it talks about in John 10:10 that the thief comes to seek, kill, and destroy, but he came to give us life and life more abundantly. I had life. I was breathing, I was going through the motions of life, but I didn't have abundant life. I wasn't happy. There still wasn't that inner peace inside of me. There's still something missing. Even though I had everything that the world could offer me, I was still missing something.
And he would get so angry that sometimes he would just punch holes in our walls, and then we would have to lie about what happened and say that we fell or whatever.
As I was searching for happiness, whether it was through pornography, whatever it may be, I was just trying to find something, just to fill this void. I couldn't figure it out.
And in 2008, we lost our home to foreclosure, and we moved in to my parents' house. And things I thought would get better because my parents were there and he couldn't really yell as much. Things didn't get better right off. They got worse.
I was always a nice guy, a kind guy. Out in the community, it was no problem making friends, people liking me and different things like that. But as soon as I would get home, because I was so stressed with so many different things, because I was missing something inside.
And he attempted to have an affair.
We ended up, as I was causing so much damage to the marriage through the search of finding happiness and finding peace, as I was looking around for that and whatever it may be, whatever was available, it caused so much damage on the marriage. I was such an angry person as well. I would come home and, like I said, even though I was nice out in the community and stuff like that, people liked me, I would get home, and as soon as I'd shut the door of my home, in those four walls was nothing but anger, bitterness, hatred, resentment. I remember Casey and I, we would argue so much. I would get so mad that I literally punched holes in the wall throughout my house. And I was just a wreck. And it helps me to realize it's amazing what people can hide behind a smile. And I was one of those people that would hide so much with just my smile.
And one night, I remember it was October 31st, praying over him because I couldn't do it anymore. And I knew that God was the only person that could change Nate.
I was sleeping, and my wife actually laid her hands on me and prayed for me.
And I just begged God to change him, to, help our marriage to work.
I had no idea. I was sleeping. She was sobbing to God, and she prayed for me for an hour. It was a true heart's cry for me in my heart. Because she loved me so much. She could see the destruction that I was causing, not only to her and the family, but also to myself.
And that night, I had no idea what God was going to do.
As she prayed for me, I don't know what she was expecting. I don't know if she said, maybe, God, I know you hear me. Or maybe she was just hoping, God, oh, boy, I hope you hear me.
And that night, he woke Nate up and had Nate watch the thing called The Basement.
It was 3-something in the morning. I was tossing and turning. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't go back to sleep. I ended up getting up, turning on the TV, and actually going through the religious channels and coming across God TV. And there's a ministry on there called The Basement from Birmingham, Alabama. And there's a young pastor speaking. He's about my age. His name's Matt Pitt. As I'm listening to him, it's just amazing how God works, because as I'm listening to him, even though he's talking to a crowd of thousands and thousands of people, and however many people are on TV, I felt like he was just talking to me.
It really did change his life. I had no idea that the prayer that I prayed would impact so quickly, that God would work so quickly in Nate's life.
And as he was talking, everything he was saying, it was just hitting home with me.
And it was just so amazing to see the anger was gone out of Nate. There was literally no anger in him anymore.
So as that happened, I remember there was a phase where, I was just on fire. And I just knew if that was me as a Christian, dealing with all these things, feeling the way that I felt, there had to be other people out there that felt that same way. There had to be not just Christians, but there had to be non-believers that feel that way, that are struggling with things, that maybe what I went through can help them, that they can somehow relate to me, in a sense, and let them know that there still is hope for them. So as I went through all that stuff, even though I had a radical transformation that night, God literally took the anger right out of me. I wasn't angry anymore. Does that mean I don't get upset every now and then? Of course I do. But the anger no longer controlled me.
Things were good for a while, but there was still always the addiction with pornography.
I still struggled with pornography.
You know, we just prayed that things would still continue to get better.
We hit a time in our marriage where we literally, things were so bad that we took off our rings.
In 2011, we had a flood and we lost everything.
The home that we were living in the addition we were living in, got hit by the flood of Irene in 2011. It wiped everything out. We lost everything. Our clothes, our bed, everything.
And, you know, God took everything, literally everything that we owned, out of our lives. And it was like He was giving us a fresh start.
We had to stay in a camper. Here it is, in the end of August. We had to stay in a camper till November. And if anyone, I don't know if you know what it's like in November in Vermont, but it's cold. We would wake up with frost on the walls. It was so cold in there. And it's not, at that point, it's not just Casey and I, it's my son, it's my daughter. You know, there's all of us. And then it didn't stop there though.
I had depression. At one point I got put on anxiety medication because it was so bad. I had just this thing that would go on with my mind where it shut off for 2 years.
Less than a year later, June of the following year, we lost our grandmother.
And that was probably the hardest thing, aside from going through the marriage stuff. It was so hard for me to watch my grandmother pass away.
This was a woman I knew for 9 years of, you know, being together with Casey and stuff at this time. The thing that stuck out to me the most, that I forever will hang on to, was while she's laying in her bed, deathbed, and it makes me emotional because she took my face and she looked at me and says, "I'm proud of you." And that's something that I will forever hang on to, and I will never forget. God did something dramatic in my life, but I was still struggling with beating myself up. I beat myself up so bad for the things I've done. I literally hated myself. I would get suicidal. So for her to actually take time while she's dying to look at me in the eyes and say, "I'm proud of you." I knew it wasn't just a message from her, but I knew it was a message from God. And I'm thinking to myself, is how could you be proud of me? Do you know what I've done? Do you know who I am inside? Do you know my heart? God reached down through this woman and said, "I'm proud of you. I love you."
A month later, my uncle passes away.
Our uncle-in-law died of drowning.
So what I did is I hid Nate and I's marriage problems behind my grandmother's passing. And I lied to everybody and said that I was going through all that I was because of Grandma passing away. And so they all thought that my anxiety and stuff was caused from that. Some of it was, but most of it was not.
Can we catch a break? You know, God, what's going on? You know, we're struggling. Our marriage is right in the thick of all this stuff. We're struggling with our marriage. We don't even know if we're going to make it. Lose our grandmother, lose our uncle, all within less than a year. We lost our home. I mean, everything. Things are just on the rocks. And I could honestly say that there was a point where you hit rock bottom.
It was really just a difficult time in our lives. And we had our 2 children as well, so I knew that, you know, we really needed to keep going and keep pressing on, and I knew that God would change all this stuff. I just didn't know when.
This was a reality check for me. It's no longer words. You know, God is like, "I need you now, okay? I need you. If you're real, if this is, you know, do something. I need a miracle right now, Lord. Restore our marriage. Restore what's been lost to us. I need you. I need you to show up." There was a gap of about 4 years after the flood to really recently, actually I should say 5 years, where It was a time where just Casey and I, we lost our friends. Really, a family wasn't there a whole lot. It was just a time of Casey and I. We were dealing with our own personal issues. We were dealing with the marriage. We had a lot of baggage that God has said, okay, guys, let's deal with this.
I remember one of the first times I was watching The Basement on a Tuesday, and I remember I had been taking my anxiety medication, not regularly, but taking it basically as a comfort thing. And I remember God saying, you need to get rid of those. If you trust me in this situation, you need to get rid of them.
Through this time, I'm watching my wife. She's struggling. She's afraid. She's worrying. She has anxiety, depression. And to know that I've caused most of that is not a good feeling. It's not a pat on the back, like, good job.
And so I thought, okay, I have 2 bottles and I'm gonna be sneaky and I'm gonna dump the first one down the toilet and it'll be gone and no big deal, and I'll still have the backup one basically hidden. But the craziest thing was that those pills made a frowny face in the toilet, and they would not go down at all. And so I knew he was making me go get the second one, and I knew that he just wanted me to trust him in this situation. So I went and got the second one, and I flushed them down the toilet, and instantly, basically I just barely touched it, and they were gone. And ever since then, God has taken my anxiety out of my life. You know, things were still not completely better. We still had a lot of work to do in our lives. And it was amazing to watch God continue to, because things got so bad, and God was with me the entire time. He showed me afterwards that he was carrying me the entire time because he knew I couldn't walk.
I was very suicidal during this time, thinking, what's the point? Thinking that my kids would be better off to have someone that's actually a good example. If I'm not around, you know, then they don't have to worry about being hurt by someone like me. My wife, I felt the same way. If I'm not around, my wife no longer will be hurt by someone like me, by my choices that I make. And through this process, and this is the part I really want to show you guys, is through this process where God, during all this mess, during all this chaos, during all these struggles, all this hardship that we had to go through, all this stuff that we endured, here we are standing together where God literally healed my wife, healed myself. I love my wife with everything I got. We are stronger than we ever have been. We've been, as of right now, it's 10 years we've been together. In a couple months, it'll be 11 years. And even though I brought my wife through nothing but trouble, chaos, for her to forgive me, and here she is standing on the other side of the storm, smiling, joyful, being able to forgive me, being able to love me, is I know that only comes from God.
I remember with the stuff that was going on with my mind, because things got so bad and my mind shut off for 2 years, I remember just thinking I need to be at the basement in Alabama. And I knew that God was going to do something. And I really want you to understand how bad my mind was. It was in a place where I was scared. I didn't know if I would ever come back. And so when I went to the basement, we sat down and the pastor started talking. And he started talking about somebody that was trapped in their own mind. And God instantly healed my mind right there. All the weird stuff that was going on with my mind where I couldn't focus and I couldn't think and I couldn't even hear what people were saying, it was all gone.
From the grace of God, to understand that he truly does love me. And I know for some people it may be strange. For some people they may not understand why God, why this relationship, why are you so radical for him? If you truly could experience everything, and as much as I try to express with my words, and my words are just, so frail and so fragile, and I can't even bring it justice, what God did through all that we've been through, you would have an understanding and say, okay, that's why they love God. That's why they live for God. Because he loves us. Not just us, but he loves you.
He took things out piece by piece. He made me deal with things from my past relationship. He made me deal with things that were going on in my relationship now. He made me deal with everything right there. And so it was a long process, and it took about 4.5 years for me to get through this process and deal with it.
And I share my story and I get transparent with you because I believe we're in a time, a day and age where everybody hides behind a smile. We got to pretend that everything's good, everything's great, whether you're in church, whether it's a pastor, whatever. We got everything together. We're all good.
Some of the healing came from our event last year, the Hope for Vermont. But I remember nights begging God to take the anger out of me, that I wouldn't be angry with Nate or have bitterness toward him for the things that he had done to me. And God did. He heard that. And now I can sit and say that God has restored our marriage to above and beyond what it ever could have been before. Our marriage before was built off of not good things, and what God did, just like in the flood, is He took our marriage and He destroyed it and rebuilt it so it would please Him, so that it would be, a God-fearing marriage and a marriage based off of God, not a marriage based off of our own selfishness. That's all I got.
Just because you have Jesus doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. But I can tell you this, that when you go through something, you are no longer alone fighting these battles. And He says, give me your yoke. Give me your struggles. Let me take it for you. Let me give you rest. Let me fight these battles for you. That's why I express myself like this, why I'm transparent. Is I want you to know that regardless what you're going through, it may not be a marriage, it may not be a relationship, it may be financial, I don't know, only God knows. But there is hope in healing through Jesus Christ.